p.m. on Thursday, April 7th, 2022. The meeting of the Mountain View Westman School District Board of Trustees is called to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. May I have roll call?
Ellen Wheeler.
Laura Berman.
Devin Conley.
Laura Blakely. Let the record reflect that 4 of the 5 trustees are here. Trustee Chang is not able to come, although he's hoping to join us a little later. If he does, we'll note that so that what time he joins. Okay, thank you. And do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Or moved. Second.
Am I supposed to ask whether there's any members of the public wishing to speak on that matter? If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on that matter, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're on the phone. Okay, seeing none. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
On a motion made by Trustee Wheeler and seconded by Trustee Berman, on a 4-0 vote, the motion to approve the agenda was approved unanimously. Okay, and now we will move to closed session. And before we move to closed session, were there any members of the public wishing to speak on the closed session agenda? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're participating by phone. Okay, seeing none, at 6:09, the meeting is adjourned to closed session, and we will let you know when we come back out. Thank you. Okay, it's 7:15 p.m. The April 7th, 2022 meeting of the Mountain View Westman School District Board of Trustees has returned from closed session. And I'd like to report that no action was taken in closed session. All right, and moving along to item 4, the consent agenda on our agenda. Does anyone have a motion?
I move that we approve the personnel report and note that it's revised since the personnel report that was sent out with the agenda because we've added some new personnel. Second.
Were there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. I'll give you just a moment. Okay, seeing none. All in favor, please raise your hand. Aye. Okay, on a motion made by Trustee Wheeler and seconded by Trustee Berman, the consent agenda was unanimously approved 4-0. Trustee Chang is not here this evening, so without his vote. Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving along to item 5, communications. Are there any members of employee organizations here this evening who wish to address the board? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you are participating by telephone. Okay, seeing none, we'll move along to district committees. If there are any members of district committees wishing to make a report this evening, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on the phone. Okay, seeing none. Dr. Rudolph, time for the superintendent's comments.
Yep. First, just want to say that Spanish interpretation is available for this meeting. If you're using a Mac or a PC, click on the globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on the iPhone or Android, it is in the options menu. Interpretación disponible para esa reunión. Si está usado una Mac o una PC, haga clic en el globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom. Si está en iPhone or Android, está el menu de opciones. Just a couple of things, just real quick. We are sending test kits home, which is a good thing. So those have, I believe, have already went out to students. So we're asking that people please, went out to students and staff. We're asking that people please use those right before we come back for break. In addition, so just in case you have some symptoms or you've been exposed, use that before we start our regular testing. We do have a community check-in tomorrow, so we'll be talking about some of the updates there. We have been working with the city about bike safety. I know I sent the trustees a message. I mentioned this at the PTA meeting, but and I'll say this again tomorrow. So in partnership with the city, I want to bring forward a recommendation to set aside an additional $50,000, and the city is going to match that. Or the city manager is going to put forth a similar recommendation to city council. That will help to hire 5 new crossing guards across the city. We also working with MVPD to look, as well as city staff, to look at where accidents are sort of occurring, so we can make some informed decisions about whether or not we need to move certain traffic guards, or whether or not they're in the right place, plus an additional 5. The city also just hired a new one, which is a help, so that brings it up to 10. So next year we will have 15. We are working on signage to work on signs that will help kids know which are the safe routes to school. So similar to the bike signs that we see, except these will be exclusive to get you to Bub or to get you to My or to get you to Graham. So we wanted to note what those routes are. The city has 26 projects underway, so they are trying to take into account any time that they need to do adjustments. Which is really good. And I provided some input, some areas that we thought were of concern, especially on the northeastern part of the city, where you don't have as many illuminated walkways as you may on other parts. But we wanted to make sure that we sort of brought that up. And then we also are working, I know that several schools had safe moves this week, but we also are going to work to make sure that's also a part of sort of our opening day rituals for all of our school sites. And the city did commit and has sort of reinvigorated and hired more staff to do safe moves. So we're working on that. I know 2 schools, I believe, this week had it. So really, that's really a good thing. And of course, any kid who doesn't have a bike helmet, MVPD is also offering those. So a lot of good work in that front. Again, I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but excited that's happening. Just want to remind parents that testing is upon us. So this will, academic testing, yes. So this will take place as soon as we come back. We'll start practice testing, and then right after that, we'll jump into actual federal testing. And just, we've been telling people to make sure we got to hit our 95% mark. The federal government has, and as well as the state, have been really stringent on that. Last but not least, I do want to congratulate a couple people on either a change of assignment or on a new appointment that was just approved. So first, I would like to congratulate Sandra Eller. She's been serving as our interim director for special ed. She has been in that position for the past year. Before that, she served as a coordinator for the department. And so congratulations to her that we're taking the interim title off. In addition to that, I also want to note that Ms. Leonard, who is currently the assistant principal over at Graham, will be joining the special ed team. And she will become a special ed coordinator, is where her passion lies. And so we're super excited that that opportunity is there. And then we want to congratulate Ms. Kearns. She is currently the assistant principal over at Crittenden, and she will be coming at the start of next year, will be the principal of Castro Elementary. So we're really fortunate to have individuals that serve as APs. And actually we have several principals who have served as an AP in some type of role who are now transitioning into a principal or a different type of role. With that, just real quick, just want to point out a couple other things that we are adding. I know the board asked for a couple more updates, but I'll share those and then we'll come back and talk about a little bit more when we do the budget. But we are adding instructional aides to Castro in grades K, 1 and 2. Kinder will get 2 instructional aides per classroom. First grade and second grade will get 1 instructional aide per classroom. We've heard the board quite loudly, as well as staff, both district staff as well as school site staff, that the number of newcomers and EL students at times can be unwieldy. And so we want to make sure that we provide some additional supports. We also are adding an at-risk. Cabinet had a long conversation about how do we make sure that kids at Castro also transition at Graham. And how do we handle the disciplinary issues that we sometimes see. So we're glad that Ms. Jimbo is leading the Wellness Center, and that Ms. Dr. Crates has been a part of that, as well as the staff over at Castro. And since we have the Wellness Center going, we're actually going to move the guidance counselor from Castro. It's the only elementary school that has it. We're going to put that guidance counselor actually over at Graham. So the guidance counselor Dina was clapping today when she saw that, when we talked about it. But super excited about that. So Graham will have 2 guidance counselors. We're going to take the second at-risk from Graham and move it to Castro. So Castro will now have 2 at-risk. And then we also will be adding in some more, another person to support for the school community engagement facilitator. There's still some logistics to work out as to whether or not it's going to be at the full campus or whether it will just be exclusive for Castro. Director Chain is going to come back after he looks at some more data points, but he's got some feedback from there. And then to replace the drop for the assistant principal, for the at-risk, we're actually going to add back the second assistant principal over at ground 2. So there'll be 2 assistant principals and then two guidance counselors. And then over at Castro, you'll have 2 at-risk, and then you'll have at least 1.5, if not 2 school community engagement facilitators, plus the instructional assistant. So super excited about some changes that we're making. More to come, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But most of these have already started to be posted, or we're about to post starting tomorrow. And so I just wanted to share with the board some changes that we've been working on to address some of the concerns that we have around Castro.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Just a quick question. I'm glad to hear about the changes. I'm hopeful that will be will yield good results at both Castro and Graham communities. But I wanted to ask, you mentioned the city had 26 projects underway. Is that all bike safety projects, or?
Yeah, so these are 26 different roadway projects that are currently underway.
Okay.
And so they are currently looking at and working with Caltrans to determine whether or not Grant and El Camino needs to be a no turn on red. One of the concerns that they brought up, which I completely understand, I think all of us who've ever been on Grant knows that right turn actually helps to keep traffic going. But the concern is that if they don't have that it actually will backtrack traffic up even further, which could impact MI. So they're going to do a traffic study over there. But they are working on adding, so the El Camino project is supposed to take place, I'll get finished, I think, in 2023. And so there are all these other projects that are still going. These 26, as soon as they finish them, they keep adding more and more. But they also said they also are trying to, anytime that they go in and they're doing something, they're repaving the street, and their crew can actually do the work, they try to add some enhancements there. But throughout the city, 26 different projects that are currently underway that should be complete within the next year that should enhance bike safety. The biggest one obviously being El Camino, but looking at, it actually is Grant and El Camino. Then I think they're also looking at Phyllis and El Camino. But again, one of the concerns they brought up just is that those 2 arteries are pretty much the main way that most people use when they're coming from Foothill. And so there's a high chance that it could create further backup. And so they're just trying to figure out what's the logistics behind that. But they are, and they want to reiterate that Caltrans is the one who sort of runs that. And so, it's unfortunate, but the good thing is that Andre's death actually spurred, Caltrans became aware of it. And so Caltrans actually said, they want to sort of really look at this project and make a decision as quickly as possible. And luckily, the city had people who could go out and do the study to speed up the process. And so the city manager, Chief Shung, as well as I'm forgetting her name right now. The 4 of us met just about 2 days ago and said that we'll meet again and sort of talk about some other things. And then I know the city council is going to be hearing some stuff, so we'll send a letter over just sort of reiterating some of these things and, encourage city council and city staff to reach out to us whenever we see an issue. The next step for us is also to go out and talk with school sites as well as staffs and sort of understand what parents and students see some issues so that we can sort of address those. And then we are working on a thought exchange, also to sort of capture ideas that we can work on ourselves, but also share with the city so that they are aware of what parents are thinking when it comes to safety too.
Thank you. That was helpful. Appreciate it. And Trustee Wheeler, you wanted to make
I have, yeah. So last time we met, it was the end of Women's History Month, and Superintendent Rudolph and I both made a few comments, and Superintendent Rudolph graciously agreed to let me make additional comments today that follow up with the comments that I made at that last meeting. So if you recall, at that meeting, I talked about the bookends of remembering the giant in leadership that Madeleine Albright provided as the first female Secretary of State in the United States. And also we were starting the hearings for potentially the first Black female US Supreme Court Justice. And today, we can happily, celebrate that Judge Brown is now Justice Brown. She was voted in 53 votes in favor. So she will start her position, hopefully many years of it, on the United States Supreme Court.
I'm delighted. And it's great to see our Supreme Court bench, reflecting a bit more what the country looks like. So yeah, I great things to come. Okay, so now, sorry. Oh, I am so sorry. Okay. So we're moving to item 6, community comments. And this is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and the administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. So if you wish to address the board on something that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you are on the phone, and we'll see how many speakers there are. And we'll allocate time accordingly. We have 10 minutes for this, up to 10 minutes for this item. I see 2 hands raised. I'll give you a moment. So raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you're on Zoom by the phone. Okay. So we just have two speakers. Each of you will have 3 minutes. We'll start with Principal Vern Taylor. And when you're ready, please unmute yourself and share your ideas or thoughts with us.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for letting me speak. I'm principal at Vargas Elementary School, and I just wanted to take the time to publicly acknowledge the positive in our district. I know as board members, if your email box is like mine, you receive a lot of the negative or problems that come up in our district. And as we go to our spring break, our staffs have been working very, very hard this entire year. It's been an incredibly difficult year. And I know my fellow principal colleagues, everyone in the district office is working extremely hard. There's lots of changes that have happened that just really have been relentless to our mental health. And I just wanted to publicly acknowledge all the hard work that everyone on our staffs are doing, and just let the board know that our staffs are really, really working hard and doing a lot of good for kids. And I know the school site staff often gets the recognition, but I also want to make sure that we also recognize those in the district office, the people in the business department, all of the departments in the district office. Just everyone is just working really hard, and I want to take that time to publicly acknowledge that, because we don't always do that. And then I also want to encourage any audience members, if they see the positive happening on campuses and at the district office, if they could just also email some positive comments and not just always kind of what's could be improved upon. And I think we do want to focus on what needs to be improved upon, but also recognize that positive. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Principal Taylor. We concur with your gratitude. We're super grateful for, I know I speak for my colleagues, for everybody at this district. And we love it when people accentuate the positive. So thank you. And I'm hopeful that you and all of the staff in the district have a very relaxing spring break coming up next week and just take time to recharge. you can hit the decks running again for the last hurrah through the end of the year. Okay, thank you. So there was a dialer of participant that entered by phone. If that was you, please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, President Blakely. This is Stephen Nelson, not dash something, whatever it is, right? Stephen Nelson, the former trustee. I'd like to add some Q8 to positive, eliminate the negative. That's how that song goes. So I'd like to remind Vern and the rest of you guys on the board that one of the ways you eliminate the negative is you work on it. So I sometimes would like to see the district office staff start a report of here's the things that isn't working. If it be the budget or if it be the big problem we have in special education. We've had that problem in special education since I joined, when I first joined the board in 2012. But the positive is I'm really glad to hear the superintendent say this issue of laying off 72 people, many of who have direct student-facing jobs, is going to be done a completely different way. And particularly, I didn't hear the discussion on that item when it came up several meetings ago, but I hope the discussion has changed around the district office people to think the main purpose of the budget, including the almost $30 million reserve, which is above what the board policy is for what your reserve percentage should be, guys. It isn't 30%. That the district office starts getting its head around that the purpose of the money is to be spent on public education, which means school, kid-facing spending. And that's what I heard the superintendent talking about, particularly for our Title I school, the school with the most problems, the school, the neighborhood school that is most segregated, Castro. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, was there one more? I thought there were just two.
I think those two and then some are the ESC. Is it gone? Okay. All right. It was 3 of them.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, thank you. All right, we will move along then to item 7 on the agenda, review and action. And the first item there, or the only item there, is the tentative agreement with the Mountain View Educators Association. And Tara Vickjerd, our Chief Human Relations Officer, will be presenting on this item.
Good
Tara?
evening. Thank you very much. I am very happy to present a tentative agreement to you this evening with the Mountain View Educators Association. The attached TA includes compensation increase of 5% on schedule for 2021-22 with a one-time 2% off schedule payment. This is a 3-year agreement that then provides 4% increase on schedule for each of the next 2 years. The TA also provides updated agreements for Article 3, which is hours, Article 5, compensation, Article 7, class size, and Article 10, evaluation. And we're very happy to come with this agreement to you this evening and ask that the board please approve the tentative agreement as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Vickjerd. Trustees, did anybody have any clarifying questions for Ms. Vickjerd? No? Okay. Were there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? If so, please raise your hand in Zoom, or if you're participating by phone, press *9. Okay, seeing none. Do we have Ms. Conley still? Okay.
She's there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I would ask if any trustees want to make any comments. And at our board retreat, we discussed having a norm where we would kind of start going in order. So Trustee Conley, if there was anything that you wanted to say, we also had agreed that we were going to try not to repeat things, that we would just, I know a lot of you get way through our meetings. We might just say, like, I agree with what Trustee Berman said or something like that. But Trustee Conley, if you have any comments you'd like to make, please do
Sure.
so.
Thank you. I would just like to say how thankful I am to both of the negotiation teams for the hard work that went into reaching this contract, and how appreciative we all are of all of our teachers in the district. And we're really thankful to have reached a contract that that works for everyone. So thank you.
Anybody else? Trustee Wheeler?
Yeah, so I'd like to say I agree with the comments made by Trustee Conley.
Same. And I wholeheartedly concur with those comments. Very excited and glad to have this agreement. Grateful for everybody who participated. So may I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the tentative agreement between Mountain View Educators Association and the Mountain View Wisman School District as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. On a motion made by Trustee Berman and seconded by Trustee Wheeler, the motion was approved unanimously with 4 votes. Trustee Chang is absent, so cannot participate in this vote. All right. I'm gonna clap on that one. All right. So we'll move along then to review and discussion. Item 8A is the strategic plan update. And Dr. Rudolph, I believe that's you.
It's going to be a bunch of different people. But I'll control the presentation as we go, and then as people come in to present their sections, if they could just tell me next, since we're not in the same room, that would be great. Oh, sorry. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the strategic plan update. So as you know, during the pandemic, we created Strategic Plan 2027. And what's different about this strategic plan, unlike the previous one, is that this aligns 2 cycles of LCAPs versus 1 cycle in 2 years. So both are aligned, and it builds on and expands from the former plan successes and also areas of needs for students. It began in 2020. We had a lot of different parent, student, staff engagement to facilitate this. And ultimately, we ended up coming up with the action plans and the actual approval of it coming at the end of last school year, 2021. And then the implementation of this began in this year. I do want to point out that some of these items, it's taken us a little bit longer to sort of get off the ground. And part of that's just, the acknowledgement that when we started, I think we all were sort of having ideas of COVID wouldn't be there, and we sort of would be able to get things back to normal. And we never anticipated things like ISP being tossed at us, or staff having to do testing and all these other things, right? And so a couple of wrenches have sort of slowed us down. And, I want to thank the board publicly for giving us a little grace and saying that it's okay that, some of these things are a little bit slower just because of the other mandates that have sort of been put on our plate. So there are 5 areas similar to the previous plan: effective and consistent instructional practices that meet the needs of all students, student social emotional health, inclusive and welcoming culture, effective and engaged employees, and equitable distribution of resources that support student success. Along with that, there is multicultural awareness and equitable resources that's sort of embedded in all of these. I do want to point out that this is a little bit different because the previous strategic plan had student achievement and achievement gap, whereas this one focuses now on what we heard loud and clear, both through surveys as well as through various interviews, that social emotional well-being was really important. and kind of fortuitous that as we started this work right before the pandemic started, that we actually, our board actually is addressing it. Within there are several key objectives. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but we're going to talk about the ones that we're currently working on. Just because there are 3 objectives doesn't necessarily mean that they're all being done at the exact same time, but it does mean that, there are 3 objectives that are within there. For social emotional health, you can see that there's 2. There's 3 for inclusive and welcoming culture, 3 for effective and engaged employees, and then 2 for equitable distribution of resources. Each one of these goals actually has a, which is different just a little bit, is one of, we tried to take a lot of lessons from the previous strategic plan and tried to figure out how could we make the next round a little bit better. So what you will see and what you're about to hear as we go through this is that each item on the strategic plan has an owner. That owner falls within a different department. Some of these items do cross multiple departments, and so they work as teams in order to sort of accomplish these. These items also are captured in our evaluation framework. So the first part of everyone's evaluation, regardless of whether they are assistant principal or the superintendent, is actually held accountable for all of these. But you will also see what is new is that we also listed what we figured are the outcomes. So it is very clear that people understand what the outcome is when we talk about improving the quality of instruction by developing a rigorous and culturally relevant instructional program. What we're expecting at the end of the strategic plan is that all teachers will be trained in culturally responsive instructional methods, and the district's curriculum will be reflective of the district's diversity. Now that could, there's multiple ways that can be accomplished, but we want to be clear what the outcome looks like so that people understand. And I think that's one of the lessons we learned from the previous strategic plan. It doesn't mean that we're still not focused on numbers, right? Because obviously we're saying that all of these outcomes will eventually lead to the same metrics that were already outlined by the board. For instance, the reclassification metric still holds. The improving students' achievement still holds. The reduction of the student the achievement gap still holds. But those were the metrics that we were looking for before. They didn't really necessarily denote what the outcome is. And we had items in there from our previous strategic plan that we didn't talk about what the outcome was at the end of the year. We just talked about the metric. And so now what we've done is we can complete an outcome, and see how what its influence is on the actual metric that the board is looking for. So in this case, when we talk about goal 1, we are talking about student achievement. We are talking about closing the achievement gap. We are talking about reclassification. We are talking about the reduction of long-term ELs across the board. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Chief Academic Officer Bauer, and she's going to go through the items that we're currently working on and sort of what the progress is. And again, I just want to point out, as I said before, some of these items, the pace in which we're doing them has been shifted just a little bit to adjust for some of the changes that we had to endure this year. So, Mrs. Bauer, I'm turning it over to you. Just tell me when you're ready to go to the next slide.
Okay, I will. Thank you. And thank you, trustees. So I'm overseeing the goal area 1 and the strategic initiatives in that area. There's 5. And something to keep in mind, all the initiatives in goal area 1 have a direct impact on staff in terms of development, but also training and implementation. And that's not only district office staff, but that's our teachers and our principals. And so as we considered our action steps and looking at how we were going to implement each of these items, we had to be thoughtful to ensure that we weren't going to overwhelm staff with trying to implement too many things at one time. Initiative 1A3, programs to increase opportunities for underrepresented students, and 1B1, fully developed MVWSD's multi-tier system of support, we're supposed to be focused on this year. And as Dr. Rudolph mentioned, the demands created by the pandemic, but also of the new programs and plans that were required by the state did take away some of our focus. So if we look at there we go. There we go. So improving the quality of instruction. So our outcome is having teachers trained in culturally responsive instructional methods. We will be focused on that next year, starting with assessing our teacher capacity and the methods that are being used as a first step, with the goal of implementing a culturally responsive competencies and instructional practices by 2026. And I'll be working with this item with Director Henderson. The second initiative is really about implementing a coordinated college and career readiness program. As you can see, we're not going to start work on that until the 24-25 school year. We're going to focus in on some other items first. Next slide. So developing programs to increase opportunities for underrepresented students. This was supposed to be a focus this year. Unfortunately, it was not. So we are going to take it up with full force next year, again, working with Director Henderson. And this work will be done in conjunction with the work on the equity framework. And we'll start with really looking at data to understand what's impacting or negatively impacting our students from enrolling in our accelerated courses. And you can see we have specific strategic actions over the course of the plan, so that we really do, by the end of our strategic plan, make a determination about our long-term strategy for acceleration. Next. Our last two is our developing our multi-tiered system of support. We have worked on this. We have put together this year, we've done a self-assessment. All of our sites have also done a self-assessment so that we can see where everybody is in terms of using different processes for looking at data, analyzing data, and monitoring student progress and how they implement interventions. Our next step this year will be to develop processes and forms and procedures really specifically focused on data, so that we're all across the district looking at data, analyzing data, tracking data in a consistent way. So whether you go from you're at Castro your entire career, or you end up moving sites, we're all speaking the same language when it comes to data. So that's our first step. And then our last initiative is around student-directed instructional approaches. And we want sites by the end of the strategic plan to have a student-directed approach that meets the needs of their specific school site. And work is going to begin on that in the 24-25 school year. And that's all for Goal Area 1. I'll turn it over to Director Jimbo.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees. And as the director responsible for Goal 2, within this area and the context of whole school, whole community, whole child model, the results of the health and wellness survey were recently presented, which provided us with sufficient data to develop a plan of action that will include updated local school wellness policy language recommendations, and in our district, that's known as the Board Policy 5030, and then also related health and wellness goals. So this plan of action will be presented to the board by the end of June 2022. Next slide. With regards to implementing a competency-based SEL model, the SEL work group that is comprised of teacher and/or administrator representatives of every school has met regularly this school year and is examining the CDE guidance that is also known as Transformational Social Emotional Learning, which includes competencies and developmental targets for the age span. This work is informing our next steps of incremental progress toward a defined approach for social emotional instructional practices that include social emotional measurement and competency aligned activities. And given our existing continuum of care for counseling needs, we want to ensure efficient and effective use of those services and supports. So examination of our continuum of care data informs the availability of intervention care, meaningful student access to and exit from intervention care, and progress monitoring of those students receiving intervention care. So thus our next step is building capacity for the use of coordination of services teams, also known as COST. So with that, I will pass it on to Director Chang.
Good evening, trustees. Goal 3 is inclusive and welcoming culture. Overall, there are 3 objectives and 6 initiatives in Goal 3. So the first objective, 3A, is to expand and enhance opportunities for stakeholder voice. Our first strategic initiative under this objective is to identify and assess meaningful and sustainable practices and patterns for parent engagement. We do currently deploy varied resources to engage our families, but there are still persistently challenging groups to reach. And this is the main thrust of this initiative. And so we want to have multiple effective ways that we engage parents and the community. We have not done direct work on this initiative yet in 21-22, but next school year we'll build upon the information gathered for related efforts to establish a vision for meaningful engagement. In 23 and 24, the task will be to create a tool that can be referenced by anyone in the community to identify specifically where or who to go to help or answers to questions. The next 2 years will be about refining processes, identifying current methods, groups, or actions that might be getting in the way of improved engagement and addressing them. And I'm going to pass it over to Director Henderson for the next initiative.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Nice to see you, trustees. I also want to share, not only in addition to obviously this kind of 5-year plan, but some things that we have really worked hard on this year in terms of laying the foundation for the work that's going to continue over the next 5 years. One of the things I'm particularly proud of with our organization is to engage interdepartmentally on work. And instead of having equity as its own kind of compartmentalized thing, right? It's really embedded in all of the work that we do, which I'm particularly proud of. And you can see that with connections to our work in significant disproportionality, connections with the work. I've worked directly, of course, all the time with directors Ellard, Chang, Dagger, Jinbo, Chief Bauer. So more and more, you're going to see kind of an integration of these equity-related initiatives into all areas of teaching, learning, and leading. So I'm particularly excited about that. For this particular inclusive and welcoming culture, one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to establish and conduct identity-based affinity groups. And affinity groups, for example, would be like a Black Student Union, right? Or a Pride Club. But affinity groups aren't just for kids. They can also be for parents and the community, which is particularly kind of meaningful endeavor. And so that's one of our objectives. And obviously, we're going to start with understanding where we are as a baseline. We're going to develop kind of a streamlined procedure so that access to forming identity groups is easy, right? Especially for the people who need it. And then ultimately, our goal is also to establish an affinity group council so that people of multiple affinity groups can connect on how to really develop their leadership styles, develop meaningful connections, because ultimately the goal is, right, intercultural dialogue. We can go to the next slide. Okay. And the equity framework is something that I'm really excited about because it's also something that's really going to propel this work over the next 5 years. It's going to help crystallize what is for many kind of a very vague or abstract concept. And that's by organizing a set of metrics that will be ultimately a mechanism for feedback. So feedback for the district, feedback for the school sites. To do this is a pretty monumental lift. Because we want to do it as multilaterally as possible. We want to involve multiple stakeholder groups. We want to have lots of brainstorming sessions. So, instead of doing it unilaterally, it obviously takes time to do it with lots of input, but I think that's really the right way to go about it. So we're going to be engaging lots of people over the next year and really isolating some domains and themes, developing those metrics, really looking at how those metrics will inform our next steps. And then not just having a scorecard as a means of kind of displaying progress, but then creating a bridge to action, because that's also really important. So all of those pieces really need to be developed kind of concurrently and with as many voices at the center as possible. So Integration is our ultimate goal. So integrating these equity metrics and equity scorecard into lots of district initiatives, things like site plans or LCAPs and things like that, so that it doesn't become something that lives by itself. Rather, it's something that's ubiquitous throughout the organization. So that's really the work that's going to be done in the next 5 years. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chief Hausman.
Thank you and good evening. So I'm going to speak about Objective 3C, and as part of this culture goal, this objective is really about how we support students and parents through a communications lens. So it's all about getting families the info they need, what's relevant to them, so that they can help their children in school. So we can best do that by differentiating communication streams, just like we do in the classroom, because we want parents to get what they need without a lot of extra information that can create feelings of overwhelm. So this differentiation will come likely in two forms. There'll be protocols and procedures, and then there'll also be technology tools. So this year, you can see we're just in our research phase. Several of you might remember the thought exchange that we held in December for parents. And we are right now in the midst of hosting a lot of different focus groups with parents, groups of staff members, to learn about communications obstacles and best practices. And so this research will inform the next step, which will be what elements do these tools and processes need to have to make communication more effective. And then once we look at some of these platforms, we will then settle on one, select it, there'll be training, implementation, and ultimately, as you see at the end of the timeline, evaluation. Back to Mr. Chang.
Thank you. So there are two more ways that we want to enhance the capacity of all parents to support student learning: regular community action projects / events, and building parent and staff capacity to support student learning. So first, school communities are going to create and refine regular community action projects or events that address the real common needs at the school and are culturally relevant and inclusive. So this is already happening in lots of ways across the school district. So the first step is to research what current examples we have and to develop, hopefully, an equity influence tool that will assess the degree to which such events meet our vision. So the following year after that, school stakeholder groups will convene to plan one new or revised project a year, and will add and refine toward ever more equitable and inclusive outcomes. And then secondly, we will refine and expand our parent university offerings to provide more equitable access to resources to help parents support their children at home. So in conjunction with the earlier initiative with Public Information Officer Hausman about differentiating our communications, we're simultaneously asking stakeholder groups about the topics that they believe will be most helpful to them, and to identify the refinement of the program next year. And then with continued reflection, research, and development over the years. Eventually, we're going to develop a set of standards of knowledge and skills for parents. These will guide parents as they build knowledge alongside their children for the purpose of supporting their learning and development. And I will turn it over to Ms. Victoria.
Thank you very much. So goal 4A is all about attracting and retaining our high quality, diverse employees. Our first initiative is focused about recruiting and hiring practices that will really help allow the demographics of our new staff to more closely align and reflect the diversity of our students. Initiative 2 then takes us to focusing on retaining our staff through clear approaches to professional development, differentiation, and support for our staff. This year, our district hiring team has really focused primarily on recruiting and hiring. We have, with the help of Mrs. Hausman, updated our recruiting flyers. Our updated images reflect our diversity and our strength as an organization, and has really drawn a lot of positive comments from recent applicants. In addition, our hiring team has been reviewing our hiring questions and practices creating some updates to our systems and the way we proceed in job fairs, interviews, calibration practices, and even our welcoming processes for new staff. Of course, over the next 5 years, we will assess our current practices and further update and improve these practices. This year, we will also be collaborating with Equimetrics to help us gather more data as we really dig into more deeply developing our policies and practices that focus on retention. Next slide, please. Thank you. Objectives for B and C are really dedicated to developing and implementing these professional development programs and leadership pathways and opportunities for all staff in the organization. And while we've not taken any actions on these items yet, we are really excited about working on these initiatives over the next several years, really collaborating with our employees, engaging with staff, and implementing really high quality programs for all of our district team so that we can retain and build and grow our amazing staff. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Westover.
Good evening. So goal area 5 focuses on resources and making sure that we have an equitable distribution of these resources to support student success and also support all of our staff that are implementing all these wonderful things with a strategic plan. So goal 5A ensures that facilities and resources equitably serve all students. 5A1 is making sure that we have district-wide equitable facilities, technology, and student resource standards that are publicly available and shared with stakeholders. We've had 2 meetings this year and we'll continue to have meetings in the upcoming years. And the idea is that really teachers and staff know exactly what they should have in their classrooms to meet the needs of their students, as well as having facilities that are equitable across to all of our sites. Another area is ensuring that every child that needs food has the opportunity for a nutritionally balanced meal. And thanks to the state, we now have ongoing free meals for students for the next 2 years. So we had shifted this year and we created a focus group that met monthly to discuss the meals that were offered to students. We will continue this process over the next few years to make sure that we're continuing to meet the needs of students by holding these focus groups and making adjustments based on what the focus groups discuss. We also want to make sure that we have a feasible district-run after-school program. So when this initially started, the state did not have the Extended Learning Opportunity Program. So this is actually going to be folded, this strategic plan initiative is going to be folded into ELOP. We also want to make sure that we have opportunities for students to learn from home. So through the pandemic, we realized there was lots of opportunities for kids to access the curriculum and continue their learning, not just at school, but also at home. So making sure that we have these items available to kids 24 hours a day, access to curriculum supports and activities to support learning. So next year, we'll start meeting with Ed Services and technology to determine which programs really are beneficial for students to have access at home and after school, and then bring in relevant stakeholders and a needs discussion, and then start rolling out the programs. We'll also have CBRS, and I know John will be doing a presentation all about CBRS in the next presentation. The last one is to make sure that we investigate and implement practical, flexible physical learning environments inside and outside of the classroom that meet the diverse needs of our students. So starting next year, we met initially this year to discuss it, but starting next year, we'll start looking at all of our school sites to make sure one, look at what is the current condition of the flexible environments that currently exist. This could be everything from having a map of the United States painted on the blacktop to having flexible seating within the classrooms. So looking at what do we currently have, and then working with relevant stakeholders and architects to determine areas of need and growth in the upcoming years.
All right. So some of the next steps is that we'll continue to look at the budget and adjust to effectively. We also will, by the end of this year, have our dashboard up and going. So similar to what we had before with batteries or stoplights or something to that effect, so that everybody can see the progress that we have on each one of these particular items. And then we'll continue to communicate out the strategic plan and sort of what our progress is. One of the things that we've learned from the first strategic plan, and you see this reflected in all of our presentations, the more that we reference it, the more that we make sense of it, the more people understand exactly where we're headed. With that, I will open it up for any questions that you have for any of the staff members.
Trustees, any clarifying questions? Trustee Berman.
I have a couple of questions. So first of all, thank you to everyone who presented today. We got to hear from so many different people, and it's really exciting to get to hear what the plan is for our strategic plan. And I know that there's been a little bit of a delay because we've been a little busy with so many other things this year. And I think it's probably because, you know, we're finally getting to a place where, you know, we're seeing our parents back on campus, and that is really exciting. And I know that we have parents that are excited to get back in to support their students. And I'm really sort of looking at the goal 3 around culture. I think all the pieces around it are really exciting. So I just have a couple of questions around it. So with the needs assessments for stakeholder feedback, I'm wondering if, you know, what that feedback looks like, if it just looks like the LCAP survey. I know Director Chang did a really terrific job at the DLAC meeting, asking for feedback from our ELAC leaders about, you know, how to improve the process or their experience for DLAC. And so I'm just wondering, you know, what that assessment or stakeholder feedback would look like for this school in particular. So if you can say just a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. If Shelley wants to jump in at any time, if I mention anything about communications that you want to clarify, please do. I think that's a pretty broad question. I will say that, Shelley, please correct me if my understanding is incorrect, but I think we're hearing a lot of similar things from all different groups, right? So like number one seems to be, in terms of communication, we all love and hate email at the same time. And so there's like no way to get around it, but we also don't like to read really long emails that maybe have things in there that don't always pertain to us, right? And so looking for kind of a streamlined tool to choose whether to read something long or read something short seems to be somewhere where we're headed with communications. I think that on the parent university or kind of parent education end of it, the things that are sticking out to me are making Parent U even more convenient. Right now, like it's a pretty long program. It's an hour and a half, and not all parents have time to commit to an hour and a half. So maybe more frequent, shorter programs might be in the works. There's also, I think, a common feeling among parents that we don't all come with the same knowledge about the American or the Californian public school system, and that work should be done to try to educate families who are most interested in, you know, figuring out how the wheels turn so that they can be even more helpful for not just their kids, but also the students and families in their communities is also a push. Shelley, do you want to jump in with a few things that stuck out to you?
You encapsulated it well. You know, also, parents talk a lot about things needing to be concise. They want to know specifically what's happening with their child. And at the top of that list is what is happening with their child in the classroom. So they want to know about progress, areas that a child might need to improve on, and lots of communication with their teacher. That's definitely a trend that we have seen so far in our research.
I also think, sorry, I was just going to jump in. Maybe the two of you could also talk about some of the things that we're starting to uncover in terms of the way that we communicate and some of the changes that we're starting to think about, whether it's the way the SCEPs are communicating and the use of Google Voice or other techniques that we've sort of as we would say behind the closed doors, like the hacks that we continue to create in order to stay in touch with certain populations. I think that gets a little bit more to what she's asking about.
Sure, I'll jump in, and then Shelley, please pop in if you have anything to add. So one big aha, I think for all of us, and it seems so, I think it'll seem pretty obvious once I say it, is that most of us in the district office and then also at the school sites do our communication on a computer. We send our communications out either via email or through newsletters, but it's on a big screen with a keyboard. But how is it received? The vast majority of time it's received on a phone. And so that can create some issues with the way that maybe we are used to communicating versus the way that the information is received on the other end. So we have a lot of people saying, like, can you just, text us? Can you just have a system where we can communicate with you kind of short form, on a phone with our thumbs? And that seems to be a big aha, at least for me. Was there something else that stuck out for you, Shelley?
Yeah, there's a functionality piece to it that we definitely will have to explore. So not only on the end of the user, but also for our employees. We're learning, especially our SCEFs and at risk, they need a platform that would combine all these messages that they receive in the different formats. So it could be text, email, voicemail, have them in one place and be able to catalog them by a family. And so that it ensures, timely follow-up. And so they have a history of those communications. And that's actually not something that we have functionality for right now. And so, they're turning to methods like Google Voice in their own phones to get that done, because mobile responsiveness is the kind of communication that families really appreciate.
Thank you for that. I think Director Chang, I was sort of harnessing that energy that existed at that DLAC meeting most recently when you were making, we were there was this brainstorm happening, and there was a lot of excitement and energy around, how to improve communication, which therefore will increase engagement, right? And I could sense that energy and that conversation from our parents, a lot of excitement around feeling like, they were having a voice and getting to express what's going to work for them. And just appreciate how responsive you were and just facilitating that conversation. And I guess my question also comes back to like, wow, Director Tanky, could you do that for like all the parent groups? Because I think that energy was really terrific. I think it's what, I think all parents want to feel like they have that voice. So I think in sort of me thinking about that stakeholder feedback, that doing that assessing of stakeholder feedback, I know that we send out parent surveys, but just in that moment, you have this group of parent leaders that you reached out to, and it was so positive. And I know you got some really great ideas, but I know there's other parent groups and other committees around our campuses. So I just, my thought was wondering if maybe something similar would go to other parent groups that exist, just to, keep finding ways to increase that engagement. So yes, in a way, kudos to you for that terrific conversation.
Thank you, Trustee Berman. Trustee Wheeler, did you have any questions? Trustee Conley, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, we will then open it up to questions from members of the community. If anybody has any questions or comments from members of the community, if anybody has anything you'd like to say, please raise your hand in Zoom, or if you're on the phone, press *9. Okay, I don't see any members of the community wishing to speak, so we'll take it back to the trustees. Does anybody have any comments? And we'll start with Trustee Wheeler.
Thank you. Okay, so one comment I have is that This was a returned item from our last board meeting, and I want to say how much I appreciate that we were able to hear this extended report in a more relaxed manner and thoughtful manner instead of trying to crush it in and then, not feel like we had time to, really ask questions or even process what we heard. So I appreciate that. And I also want to say how much I appreciate, even though it wasn't in person, how I appreciate being able to hear from so many of the district staff who are leading these initiatives. So I appreciate, all of you showing your faces on the screen and describing your work to us.
Thank you, Trustee Berman. Any additional comments?
Well, I completely agree. It's just, I got to look through the whole plan a couple of weeks ago for the prior meeting, and it got moved to this one. And, it gave me another opportunity to take a look at it, and just really excited about the goals and the outcomes that we hope to see in our district. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Trustee Conley. Was there anything you wanted to comment on?
I agree with both of my colleagues, but I also, when I look at these initiatives, part of me wishes we could do all of these things in the next year. There's really exciting work that's been laid out, and I'm just trying to convince myself to be patient. I'm looking forward to all of these things, and thank you to all of the staff members for taking them on and really participating in a heartfelt and committed way in this process.
Thank you, Trustee Conley. And I just wanted to add, I think I've probably said this before when we were initially doing it, but I like the thoughtfulness of sort of spacing things out and, appreciating that we can't do it all at once. And so some of the ones, it's nothing this year, nothing that year, because we're going to focus on these other things first. But I'm really excited to watch how it all unfolds and very optimistic that we're going to make some really good progress. And I'm also very hopeful we don't have any more things like COVID resurgences kind of bump us off track a little bit. But I know I'm confident in the staff and being nimble and just focused on what needs to come first, that we'll, if we have to deviate, we'll get back on track. But I'm hopeful it's going to be a little more linear. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's really, like the other trustees said, great to have so many of you so deeply involved and to see your faces tonight.
Since we have time here, can we take a short bio break before we go on to our last item?
I was just going to ask if that was appropriate.
Yes.
So it is 8:22. We'll take a 5-minute bio break and we'll be back at 8:27. Okay, thank you. That was kind of a long 5-minute break. It's 8:32 and the trustees are reconvening. And just before we move along to item 8B, the update on citizen broadband radio service, Dr. Rudolph wanted to make a quick comment.
Yep, I just wanted to just express a moment of gratitude. Taking on a strategic plan is really a hard initiative, just in general. Taking one on in the middle of a pandemic is probably, I at least know from my peers that no one else tried that. And not that Vern inspired this, but since Vern did mention like a moment of gratitude, I do want to say like every single member who was actually on here, because it's all the leadership team, like each of them have been amazing at embracing a new strategic plan and making sure that the work is actually getting done and that we're laying the groundwork. And so whether it's the principals at the site and facilitating these conversations, or if it's the members of cabinet who, even today continue to get pushed, like, let's not settle. I just want to express my deep gratitude for the work that they do. They are probably unsung heroes in making sure that, our students get the best. And they're a large part of the reason why the teachers, instructional assistants, everybody is a large part of the reason why, like, we've seen such gains over the year. From our first strategic plan is why we're excited to see the gains next time. I couldn't ask for a better crew to work with day in, day out. Thank you all for continuing to push, to inspire, but also to sort of give yourself up in service of the kids. So it is all inspiring to think about all the stuff that they're talking about. And of course, I get to see this all, like, listening to them in this moment is totally different than when we're in meetings, because in meetings is always like, okay, what's coming next? Here's what we're doing, and getting the feedback. And then being able to just sit back and listen to them. Not that I am a dad, but not that it's a proud papa moment, but just watching how much we have grown since I first came here to this moment is super amazing. And so I just wanted to say that since I know they all have to sit here and listen, which is really good. And so just one last thing real quick before I turn it over to John. This is yet another initiative that I think is really awe-inspiring. We're glad that, I know Trustee Connolly's birthday is today, so happy birthday. And she, part of the reason why we know it's her birthday, because she said she was super excited about Cbrs, which is what we really call Mountain View Connect. And the tower is there's a tower up here now that John's going to be talking about. But I think this is just another illustration of the passion and the creativity and the commitment that our team has. We started off thinking about internet when the pandemic hit. And we were thinking of, like, can we drive buses and drop them off? And then we were like, well, maybe we turn parking lots into Wi-Fi hotspots. And then, the idea sort of kept growing from there, which leads to MVWSD Connect, which everybody's really excited about. I think it's another indication of what we do that is so different here than any other place. And it's really amazing because other places, I can only name one other place, and they have a lot of this in Texas. Actually used to be my boss, and he has oil money that helps him to do a lot of creative things, which is why they were launching satellites for internet. And so outside of that creativity, because you have oil money funneling, the fact that we're able to create solutions for that are just unheard of and that are really awe-inspiring is really great. So I want to turn it over to John to sort of talk about MVWSD Connect, which also we refer to as our Citizens Broadcast Radio Service.
Okay, thank you. Let me just share my screen and I can get started. All right. Okay, so I'm giving a quick update on CBRS. The project we started initially last year. So CBRS is part of our strategic plan. It's item 5B, and it's ensuring students have access to the internet inside and outside of school. CBRS primarily is the outside of school portion of that part. So I want to start with just a quick recap of what CBRS is. It's a strange name for a spectrum that was recently released that had previously been under the sole use of the military. I think it was primarily used by Navy ships as some radar. And so for most of the country, the spectrum was never in use. So by opening it up, it allows districts and other organizations to access a licensed spectrum, but without having to buy spectrum licenses, which typically cost millions of dollars. So one of the benefits is that we can provide coverage farther out than traditional Wi-Fi. The range is much greater, and it also penetrates through buildings better than Wi-Fi does. So our focus so far has really been on building out the network. Last year, we did a small pilot at Castro Mistral. We had a contractor come in and set up a CBRS radio for us, just so we could test it and see how the technology worked. It did work, but we found that the manufacturer of the radio we piloted, they sort of ended their product line. They decided they were going to pull out of that market, and we had stability issues with the device anyway. So we found another manufacturer that provided category B, which is the higher power radios, and we switched out Castro Mistral to use those radios and test out like a sort of a standard setup for the district. So this year, once we standardize on the setup, which is it's 3 radios rather than the 1 radio we piloted, and each radio is directional, so we can provide a much more focused area of coverage. And so we have them set up with a radio and then an external antenna, and that provides about 120 degrees of coverage. And then there's 3 of those, so we can provide a full 360. So it provides better coverage, better, and also more client connectivity, because there's 3 radios rather than just the 1. So far this year, we've deployed radios at 4 school sites, including Castro Mistral. We had some supply chain issues with the rooftop mounts that took about 8 months to get. But once we received those, we started out building the network. And our first site that we started with was Monolima. Each site has sort of its own unique challenges with where to place the radios. So we're trying to find somewhere that's high up to get the best coverage, but also has access, easy access, relatively easy access. So if we have to do any maintenance or make any changes to it, and also is somewhere that like is not easily accessible, just to prevent vandalism and other issues. So this is a picture of the Monolima setup. It has the mast that we have that took 8 months to get, and then you can see, I don't know if my cursor is showing on this thing, but you can see that the external antenna is here, and then the radios are here. And then we have a picture of, sorry, this is the setup at Vargas. So we try to get these really high rooftop mounts that would go over the roof line of the MUR. So that's been part of the challenge, is figuring out where the best location is at each site. We thought it would be the highest building at the site, but it isn't necessarily, either because of access or because it's getting blocked by another structure. So this screenshot here is of Google's network planner. What it does is allows us to place where our radios are and our access points and antennas and the height, and then it gives us an estimate of coverage based on buildings and trees that are in the area. So it can kind of give you a good sense of where you're getting coverage. And it's kind of interesting to see that the signal kind of bounces around, so you can see that like it might be weak here because it's probably getting blocked by a building, but then it kind of goes around that building. And so like if you're really close to the school, obviously you're going to get really great coverage, but we're not sure about is the quality in these little sort of dark blue, purple areas. Nick, who's our network administrator, has been doing all the installation work at the school sites for the radios. He said he got a signal when he was driving down Shoreline at Via, He was driving, so he couldn't test the speed, but we thought that was further than we anticipated. So, and then this next slide is a picture of if our plan is to deploy at all the school sites, and this includes every site, including Cooper, which is down here. We haven't tested the fiber at Cooper, so we don't know if we can get something out there. And Huff MI is right nearby, so it may not be necessary. But then Wispin, we have tested the fiber, so we can put a radio over there. And then we've tested the fiber to the city that we have. So we've been talking with the city about whether we could put one at the community center and provide additional coverage. So we've also been testing out different client devices. We started out last year, we did the small client USB modems that we liked because they were low cost, they were small and rugged, and they didn't have to have a separate power adapter. But what we found is that not having external antennas and then only being powered by USB, that they weren't as strong as something that would be plugged into AC power. So we tested a variety of client devices. We bought some iPads that had Cbrs built in. We tested some, I don't know if you can see, we had some like low-cost routers we got from our vendor, gave us some stuff to try out. Another USB, I don't know if you can see that, another USB device, and then like a little hotspot that you could use to connect to the Cbrs network. But what we found worked best was this router from Cradlepoint. They're not pictured here, but it has 4 external antennas. And what we liked about it is it has a web-based management interface where we can manage all the devices, and it supports 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So one of the issues we discovered last year was that a lot of the families that needed internet at home, they lived in apartment complexes, and everyone had their own Wi-Fi in the apartment complex, which interfered with everyone else's Wi-Fi in the apartment complex. And so even the hotspots, they wouldn't be able to get a good connection to the hotspot sometimes because of all the interference. So with these, we can actually do a channel scan of the available channels in their area and pick one that works best for that location. So right now we're working on setting up all the Cradlepoint routers so we can distribute them to families. We set them up in this box that we purchased that has our MVWSD Connect logo that Corinne created for us. And the box allows it to be fully set up with all the antennas connected, and we include some directions on how to set it up, so the family just has to open it up and plug it in somewhere in the house. So, and we also still have we have the USB modems. If you look pretty close, it's another alternative. And then we're renewing some hotspots for the next year, just in case of any families that are outside of the coverage range. So next steps, continue deploying radios at the school sites. We have enough radios to do, I think, all of the school sites by the end of this calendar year. And then continue moving families over to Cbrs that have been using the hotspots. And then there's also some outdoor devices we want to test out that allow you to get a much further connection from much further away. One of the vendors we talked about said that you could get a connection from 5 miles away because the device was mounted on the exterior with also exterior antennas that picked up the signal better. And then continue to optimize the radios. We're putting up radios at all the school sites just on one tower, but we could move like one radio and antenna to another location on the site to maybe provide better coverage for a certain area, or different optimization techniques like that. So, and then that's my last slide. So let's stop my sharing.
Thank you. So trustees, I know I have a few questions, but I think Trustee Berman, you are up next in our order.
Well, thank you. So I'm just curious. So in order for students to connect, they need to have some sort of device from us. Is that correct? So if I don't have a device from the district, then I can't not log into this network. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and you also have to have a SIM card, which we load onto the device.
Got it.
We're hoping down the road that there'll be Chromebooks with built-in Cbrs like there are like right now with iPads. But right now it just isn't. There aren't anything out there. Right? There isn't anything out there at the moment.
Got it. This is just really, really exciting for our students. And I'm curious, what has the user experience been for them? You know, sometimes when you get these devices, you have to sort of figure out how to set them all up to get things going. But can you maybe tell us a little bit about what it's like? How easy is it for a student to, you know, bring their box home and set things up? Has it been pretty simple?
So we set them up so that the USB modems, they just plug into their Chromebook and then it connects right away. So they don't have to do anything setup wise with those. With the Cradlepoint routers, we set them up with the MVWSD Connect SSID, and then we pre-configured all of the Chromebooks to automatically connect to that network if it sees it. So they would just plug in the device and wait a few minutes while it connects to the Cbrs network, and then open up their Chromebook, and it would automatically connect to the wireless. And if there's multiple students in the household that have Chromebooks from the district, they all would be able to use the same wireless network.
Oh, it sounds really simple and really amazing. Thank you.
John, have you, with the pilot that we did over at Castro Mistral, what was for the kids that actually participated? Do you want to share any of the feedback that you got from them?
Well, we had initially we had stability issues with the piloted radio, and then by the time we got the new access points and got everything set up, then it went down for the summer because of construction, because we had no power at the school site all summer. So we didn't get a lot of student testing over that time period. So.
Thank you. Trustee Conley, did you have any questions for Ms. Raker?
Yes, thank you. I am so thrilled to see this becoming reality. I had a question. Do we envision being able to also connect our preschool families? I know that our preschool students had iPads last year, and so I was curious if we're going to get them on too.
Yeah, we distributed iPads to preschool students this year as well, and we could distribute the same Cradlepoint routers would work with the iPads as well. We might need to set up the iPads for that network ahead of time, but that wouldn't be an issue.
Awesome, thank you.
Trustee Wheeler, did you have any questions? Okay, well, I have a couple. My recollection was last year when we discussed this, the USB modem connector was about $100 per piece. And I'm wondering what the cost approximately is of the Cradlepoint routers and also the SIM cards.
The
So I'm just trying to get a sense of.
They're just under $500, and the SIM cards are $10. So.
Okay. And I don't remember, I don't have the slide in front of me, but we've got 500 of them, something like that?
200 of the routers.
200, yeah. Okay, as a kind of a pilot. Yeah. And you said everybody in the family that has the SIM card could use the same Cradlepoint router? With
the Cradlepoint router, it just needs one SIM card. And then anybody in the family could connect to that same SSID, the wireless network that it provides within the household. So. Okay. And thank you. And have we had any conversations with our partner districts about, partnering like for, families that have a student in middle school and a student in high school, for example? Well, there's the county office of ed that we do these monthly meetings we go to. I know the Campbell School District is testing out the same Cbrs technology, and the county is testing it out at Luther Burbank, I believe. So they've been talking about how is it that maybe districts could utilize other districts' networks if students are, moving in the area, but it hasn't really gone beyond just initial discussion.
Okay, but so just theoretically or conceptually, if a family had a 7th grader and a 10th grader, let's say at Mistral and Los Altos, just for example, would the 10th grader need to get a SIM card or something that they're not in our district?
Yeah, well, the 10th grader, because we pre-configured the Chromebooks to connect automatically, so the 10th grader's Chromebook wouldn't connect automatically.
Okay.
To the network. Yeah.
Okay, so they would need to do something separate. All right, I'm just trying to figure out how to lever our resources for the whole community. Obviously, our first priority as school board trustees of Mountain View Westman District is the students in our district, but they'll graduate out and they have siblings and family members. So thank you. Trustee Wheeler.
So I just wanted to point out this iPad is actually working on the CBRS network right now. It's not connected to Wi-Fi. So if you wanted to see how fast it jumps, and our building is notoriously tough for Wi-Fi. So we actually had to put extra antennas, but the antenna that we're bouncing off of has nothing to do with the CBRS. So if you wanted to go to a website or see what the experience feels like, at least on the iPad, then you can get a feel here.
Thank you. And Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, so following up on your question, Superintendent Rudolph, have you been in communication with the superintendent from MVLA to tell her about this work that we've been doing and see if they want to try to get in with us on something?
I have. I think every district is at a different point in terms of what they are interested in doing. And the city's also talked with us about it, but we've been sort of forging ahead and, have sort of been figuring out, like, this has been a sort of something that we really believe in and something that we wanted to do. But I know even John has had a chance to talk with their tech people, but I don't think that they were at the point that we are.
And roughly how many families did we have hotspots out to last year? It seems to me that it was more than 200. So we'll probably end up needing, although some of those families would have multiple kids, but.
Yeah. So we issued a hotspot. I think we have 250 some hotspots, and then we had each student had a hotspot, so because they didn't necessarily support more than one or two students. So
Okay.
one family could use one of the cradle point routers rather than two hotspots.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. So if there are no further clarifying questions from trustees, I'm going to open this up to comments from the members of the public. I see we have at least one person with their hand up. If there are any others that would like to comment or say something about this, please raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 if you have dialed in. Okay, I see one member of the public, the person dialing in with the phone number ending in 176. Please unmute yourself and share your comments.
President Blakely?
Yes.
This is Steve Nelson. I would like that designated in the minutes, not my my telephone number. Is that okay?
I believe that the minutes will reflect that you called, but I don't necessarily know if your name isn't on the list of participants, who it is. We've had other people dial in.
Well, there's no way of doing that because I'm doing it by phone, and I will send you an email confirming that. Two-factor authentication. You can send it back to me, okay?
Sure.
Good. Okay. I hope you can start it now. What I want to know is what is the map of density of SED families and other poor families needing internet support? Isn't the total number at least 6 times 200? Or where is that information, John? How does this, I would say, demonstrated needs map overlay the plan build out flux map? Where is the density overlays product map? In other words, the needs density times the power density, because I assume the data rate is related to power. Looking through an equity lens, my good people, I will ask that question again and again and again, as long as my Peace Corps teacher experience lives in my heart and lives in my mind. Resources equitably distributed, not equally distributed. No iReady access over the summer due to no 120 volt AC at our only Title I school. Director of IT, please give us a Silicon Valley tech savvy metric. Please, John, and please, board majority, that magic number 3. You can make this happen on Silicon Valley time, not just being studied. Please do it. Give us results. Give the community results. Give these families that are in need and iReady internet conduct connectivity access to that tool. Thank you.
Thank you. And I actually did want to ask John Aker, and I forgot. Sorry, my notes are not in terribly great order. What is the timing for the rollout? I know we've already got it pretty much up and running at the 4 sites, and I know that you had planned initially looking at this, the students without access, to put those in places that were likely to have a higher utilization.
Yeah. So we're just got the Cradlepoint routers, so we're still setting those up, and then we can start distributing those out. So that's been our holdup, is sort of supply chain issues.
Okay, so do we have any sense, 6 months, 3 months, a year?
We're targeting December that the full network will be up and going. We specifically targeted Castro and Mistral first to get that up and going, which it is. And then we started strategically looking at different spots. So for instance, one of the reasons why we chose Vargas as one of the secondary sites, because it actually provides access to those families who are over in the mobile park that are on the other side of Central. And so we've been very strategic to look at where the needs are, as opposed to simply just putting them up anywhere, which is why Amai and Bob are some of the last sites that will actually get it. We've been following sort of the unduplicated map.
Thank you. I do recall that. And I'm really excited to hear that it's likely to be fully in place by the end of the year. And let's hope those supply chain issues, settle out. I know we're all experiencing that in many, many aspects of our lives. So, okay, comments from trustees. And I think we start with you, Trustee Wheeler.
So I have no special comments other than thank you, John Aker. But I would like to do something somewhat unusual and ask Trustee Conley, with your experience with the Digital Equity Coalition, does this sound like something that you either are sharing or will share with the other members of the coalition, and see if maybe we can help share this information?
Yes. So Trustee Wheeler, the County Office of Education actually has a Cbrs consortium, and they have held workshops and trainings for districts that might be exploring the option. They've been providing education materials about how to do it. So it's wonderful. There is a countywide effort to push out the information and resources around getting something like this off the ground. Different districts are in such different settings where it may or may not work. So, for example, in a rural district up in the mountains, the Cbrs isn't going to have the radius to be able to get to all of the students because the district is so spread out. But in a more dense urban setting like where we are, it's a really great, viable option.
Trustee Conley, I apologize because you're zooming in. I think it was actually your turn. So if you'd like to continue to share your comments with us, because you've been so instrumental in this area, and we are grateful for your leadership, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, President Blakely. This has been a real passion project. I'm so thrilled to see this coming to fruition in our district. And it all started with a map of where the needs were, where we had students who weren't connected to the internet, and then overlaying how to get access to those children first. I can't thank Dr. Rudolph and Mr. Aker enough for their initiative in pursuing this work and being really creative. We had stopgap measures in place. We did make sure that all of our children were online and were participating, especially during distance learning. So we have had sort of temporary solutions in place, but this is going to be a much more sustainable solution. And, I'm hopeful that eventually maybe the city of Mountain View or the county will start to provide more access for families in general. But it's thrilling to see this, and I can't believe this presentation was on my birthday because it feels like a gift. So thank you for all of the work on this, Dr. Rudolph.
Hear, hear. Trustee Berman.
Agree with Trustee Conley completely. And I think the only thing I'll add, and I think this is something that's really, that's already understood, is that, before the pandemic, it seemed like, fast internet was sort of a nice to have. And now through the pandemic and today we realize, access is really critical to all of our community members, especially our most vulnerable, because we, need it for to get COVID testing. We needed to make appointments online for application for rental support. The list goes on and on about how essential being able to be connected is. So I just am incredibly proud that our district has put this network in place, is making sure that our students are connected, and just what an incredible service that we have for our students in our district. So thank you.
And I echo the comments of my colleagues. So thank you. Super grateful to our staff for the vision and the persistence to put this in place. Okay. The next item on our agenda is board updates. Do any board members have updates for us this evening?
Yes, I'll wait.
Okay. Then we have items for future agendas.
Nothing was submitted.
So I guess this is where I would say this, kind of a combination of board updates and requests for future items. And this is probably something that you're already planning on anyway, but I've been attending bunches of online forums about universal preschool and universal transitional kindergarten. Attended another one today through CSBA. And I request that, when we have our arms around, what you're going to do as a district, that we have a presentation about how we're going to approach this.
Thank you, Trustee Wheeler. So the items for future agendas, did you say there were none? Did I catch that correctly, Dr. Rudolph?
Yeah, nobody submitted some by email.
Okay, so the next item is future board meeting dates. Those are in the agenda. The next two meetings are May 5th and May 19th. And what will be discussed, at least known as of today, is set out in the agenda. And at 9:06 p.m., the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.